a very good standard of living from football. Certainly there's a lot of worries and a lot of hard times in it, but I think the most any manager gets from football is seeing everyday boys join a club as youngsters and growing into men and giving themselves better social standing than they could ever have dreamed of from a game of football.
When you're looking for players, you're looking for ability, but you're looking for courage as well. Ability without courage is no good. The two of them combine something. I don't mean courage where you want to fight somebody if they kick you or something. That's rubbish. That's not courage at all. That's stupidity. I mean courage to control the ball in close situations, not to be afraid of the opposition.
When the war came to an end, I, like many others, had to face some facts, some hard facts. I was about 36 years of age. My days as a player were numbered. I couldn't live in memories. I had to think of my loaves and fishes. Yet I couldn't think of leaving this wonderful game of football. So I decided to try my hand as a manager.
From the vantage point of the present, the achievements of Matt Busby, Bill Shankly and Jock Stein are seen to be linked by far more than their shared origins in what was the West of Scotland coalfield. But the sense of a natural triumvirate that emerges from the historical record, and which was certainly strengthened for me by long friendships with all of them, obviously didn't suggest itself in their early years in football. At the end of the Second World War, Bill Shankly was realizing that his days as a player at Preston were coming to an end. Jock Stein, 9 years younger than Shankly, had yet to progress beyond part-time professionalism with Albion Rovers and was working underground in the kind of Lanarkshire pit Matt Busby had left as a teenager. Naturally enough, it was Busby, the oldest of the three, who was leading the way into management with his appointment at Manchester United. The second film of this trilogy traces Busby's extraordinary pioneering example and how the careers of Shankly and Stein accelerated in a way that would eventually force the football world to regard the ex-miners as a unique collective phenomenon.
All I had, apart from playing experience, were certain ideas as to what a manager should do, faith in those ideas, and faith in the future of the club. But the success of a club does not depend on one man. It depends on cooperation. Cooperation between the board of directors, who make the final decisions on policy, the staff, the players, and the supporters. The loyalty of all these is essential.
When Matt Busby took over Manchester United, there were problems at Old Trafford that predated war damage. For decades, United had been very much Manchester's second football club, thoroughly overshadowed by Busby's former employers, Manchester City. Old Trafford, as we see it today, was built on foundations laid by Busby's progressive vision and strength of purpose. His impact on the place was that of a quiet revolutionary. Being a novice in management didn't prevent him from insisting on absolute control over all football matters at the club. He made all appointments to his staff, crucially those of Jimmy Murphy as his assistant and Bert Whalley as backup for Murphy, and he gave a priority to the development of young players within the club that was unprecedented in the British game. How do you recall him in those days? You know, was he a strict father?
He was. He was to me anyway. Yeah, he was quite strict as I got into my teenage years, you know. Although, really, it was my mother that brought Sandy and I up, really, because Matt was away all during the war.
Yes.
So, but when he could always, you didn't have to say, you just got the look.
Oh, I see. That applied not only to players, it applied to the children too. A look was enough, was it?
Yeah. He used to come home, say on a Friday, he'd pick the team, and he'd be upset because he'd left somebody out and so forth. And he used to always discuss it with my mum, you know, and she used to say, well, you'll always do the right thing, Matt.
Lancashire finalists take the field at Wembley. Manchester United in dark shirts, Blackpool in white. It's the North's big day. Sunshine.
Commitment to youth was already basic to Busby's approach, but veterans still predominated in 1948 when he achieved his first landmark success with United by winning the FA Cup. They hadn't been in the final since 1909.
The ball away downfield where Carey meets it, and equally short, but puts it to Delaney. Delaney now with all the United forwards up there, puts that ball through, and he's let it go! And it's a goal! A beautiful goal by Rowling! He would let it go, Rowling put it past the centre half, and just calmly beat the goalkeeper, put the net all in one move.
My whole life had been instinctively knowing that we had to get through the war. It was a question of surviving as opposed to achieving. And then suddenly Busby and that team of 1948 put before youngsters of my generation and my age the clear knowledge that there is something to, that there is more to life than just surviving. There's something that can be achieved.
John Stalker, former Deputy Chief Constable of Manchester, remembers what that day in '48 meant to his native city.
I recall the day very clearly because everyone had the windows open, and if you didn't have a radio or you for some reason couldn't stay in the house, you could hear the football match sort of.
You listened to somebody else's.
Because this was very close area.
Communal radio.
And managed to get a free kick right up in the goal. I've got the head to goal.
The King hands the silver trophy to skipper Johnny Carey. Their 4-2 victory, snatched in the last few minutes, gives Manchester United the reward they richly deserve.
It was Busby who did it. We didn't realise it as youngsters, but because he was the manager, he wasn't on the pitch. But we knew that somebody somewhere had guided a team which didn't have any great history of success to Wembley and to win.
I've had the utmost support from my directors, my colleagues on the staff and the players. I've had the priceless blessing of a wonderful mother. I've had a wonderful wife and a happy home.
Jean Busby, like her husband, was brought up in a mining family in the Bells Hill area of Lanarkshire. In her case, it was a Protestant family, but the strength of feeling that brought the two of them together and turned Jean into a Catholic made them an extremely close, mutually dependent couple throughout their lives. She was a supportive partner in everything he did, especially in furthering his concept of the football club as extended family. And your mother, I believe, used to take the wives out when the team were away.
When they were away, she took them out. They used to meet at my mum's house. They used to go out for dinner.
I think it was through her own experience. But, you know, in the old days, players' wives were never invited to a football match. Never looked after, really.
It is interesting that the strong, long-lasting marriages that plainly helped these three men to cope with the hazardous variables of their lives in football were all made with women from their own part of the country. Jean Stein met her future husband in a chip shop near their Lanarkshire homes, and although Corporal Shankly of the RAF married Agnes, or Ness, while she was serving in the women's branch of that service, it was an Ayrshire Glasgow union.
The same feelings as I carried along as a player. I carried along as I was going to be a manager of a football club.
See, a lot of people have seen in the great Scottish football stars an element of arrogance, you know, that here's to as was like us. Do you think you've got that?
I don't think it's arrogance. I think it's confidence and pride. I think arrogance is not a good word, really. I mean, I think it's arrogance. It could have the same kind of meaning as hypocrisy. I mean, I think arrogance is a very bad word. I think it should be stricken from the dictionary.
In 1949, a year after Manchester United's FA Cup win indicated that Busby was likely to prove an exceptional manager, Shankly was taking his first management job in the more humble setting of Carlisle.
And when he came here, he started addressing the fans directly, didn't he?
This is your manager speaking. Like, it was through the tannoy. But people loved it. People would come down early to, you know, they didn't want to arrive at the kick-off. They wanted to listen to Bill. Yeah. And he used to tell them the team news and what he expected, and, you know, a few locals in, give him a cheer, and this was Bill. I mean, and he had this sort of rapport with the public. They loved it. People say it was a breath of fresh air. I thought it was a sort of a Twister, you know, this film, The Twister. I mean, that was the sort of impact he had, you know, Bill.
Ivor Broaddus had been player-manager of Carlisle before Shankly arrived, but in his own and the club's financial interests, Broaddus had moved to Sunderland, who were eager to sign a man whose brilliance as an inside forward made him a worthy England partner for Tom Finney. Although London-born, he still lives in Carlisle.
I met Bill the first day he was here, I think, and he was staying at a hotel, and I said to him, Bill, I said, it must be terrible living out of a suitcase. I said, you must come up and have a meal with my wife and I. And he said, I'll come tomorrow night. You see, but it didn't matter. It didn't matter that tomorrow night was a Tuesday and I was playing at home.
At Sunderland?
At Sunderland, but that didn't matter.
He went along anyway?
Bill went along and talked football to Joan, and I arrived back and...
What time did you get home?
Well, I got home around about 10ish, and we talked till maybe 1:30 in the morning, and then I walked down from the bungalow I had on Brough Road with Bill as far as Carr's Biscuit Works, and he talked most of the way, Bill. I mean, he was that type of character.
As you came towards the end of your playing career, did you have any doubt in your mind that you wanted to stay in the game on the management side?
Oh, that was all uppermost in my mind from the day I was born, to play football and to stay in it. I mean, this is the only thing I knew.
Football's importance in the tightly integrated, clannish family life of the Shanklys led all five sons into the professional game as players, and two of them, Bill and Bob, into management. Bill's obsession with football was reinforced, never diluted, when he went back to Glenbuck.
They played all day. We used to meet the uncles at the bus stop at the top of the hill when they come back from the mine, because we knew that they would get fed, and immediately after that we'd have a game. Yes. Because they played with us. The mothers, the five sisters, disciplined us. Yep. But the father played. That was a great thing.
But Bill would be away by that time.
He was away. He was away by that time. He came back and visited. Yeah. Now,
did he play when he came back? He played wherever he went.
No, he didn't. He didn't play. He stood aside, and whenever he came up, my Uncle Bob was always there as well. Yeah. So the family gathered, and if they didn't gather at my grandmother's, they gathered at my mother's, or they'd come into Muirkirk and they would pick up my Auntie Bell.
My mother.
And they would go to my Auntie Net's because my Auntie Net didn't keep 100%, or my husband didn't keep 100%, and we would meet. And if you've ever seen a family of 10 with the extended family congregated round it, you know what the meetings were like, because my Auntie Liz would see you coming from 150 yards away and say, "Hello!" And away she went.
Difficult, shortage of money, couldn't buy players, but we were happy, had good teams, we played a lot of good football, good experience. But whilst I was there, I knew that one day I would get somewhere else with a reasonable amount of luck.
If Shankly's career was trailing behind Busby's at that stage, Jock Stein's was still buried in obscurity. Neither the Pit nor Albion Rovers provided much reward for his labours, and full-time football, even with non-league Llanelli, seemed an attractive alternative.
I always felt that each year I was losing more and more interest in it and getting less keen each year, and I decided then to move. And I moved to Wales more as a gesture than anything.
Stein's time at Llanelli gave him more anecdotes than satisfactions. Dougie Wallace, who played with him at Albion Rovers and had talked him into going to Wales, remembers the big man as a reluctant emigrant. When Jock came down to Llanelli, Jean Stein didn't come with him, did she? They didn't move down to
I never met her in Llanelli.
No.
No, she never came down at all.
So Jock took digs and travelled up at
Well,
weekend.
his excuse was that we had board meetings every Monday, and of course I sat on the board as the captain, as the manager. And he kept on telling me that this and that, and he's got to see the kiddies and all that. And he was away 9 times out of 10 at the weekend, after the Sunday, till about Tuesday or Wednesday. He missed the training then for the following week, like.
I wanted back home through my home being burgled then. I was determined I was going back home and even giving up the game.
What happened that day, the day you had decided to give up the game?
I was away playing in Hastings and I got word that my house was burgled, and I went to the ground in the morning just to kind of sort things out, and the manager then told me that Celtic were interested in me. I didn't believe it at the time.
Celtic's decision to pluck Stein from the wilderness of non-league football has an obvious fairy tale improbability about it. But to some who shared his Protestant upbringing in Lanarkshire, it seemed more of a horror story. Rangers and Celtic are seen by the majority of supporters on both sides as confronting each other across the most bitter sectarian divide in sport, and many felt that Stein should have had sufficient inborn loyalty to the royal blue of Rangers to make identification with the green of Celtic unthinkable.
As soon as Jock signed for Celtic, no, I mean, that was Jock. Me and him didn't go into all the same.
Really?
Oh, no, because a lot don't get wrong, a lot of us in Burnbank was the same with Jock.
Aye.
It took us a long, long while before we could accept it.
Turncoat?
Well, he was. Well, I need two ways of it. It was a turncoat. And that didn't go down too well in Burnbank.
But yeah, you know, you're saying that a lot of people in Burnbank turned against him, but...
Well, he didn't actually turn against him. He just didn't like the idea of him going and playing in a green and white jersey.
Right.
No, I mean, that was just...
But yet,
didn't turn against him.
Rangers wanted him back, as you know. Rangers offered him the job as manager subsequently.
No, I don't think so.
Oh, it's a fact.
Oh, is that a fact?
It's an absolute fact. Twice.
I'm glad to hear that, and I'm glad to hear he didn't go.
His old father was a great blue jersey supporter.
And
his father.
And he was an official of the Vicks, wasn't he?
I couldn't actually tell his father was blue daft.
Yeah.
And I don't think his father was pleased when he went to Celtic either. Never mind me.
No, apparently, Jock told me himself, he said that when he was going to play for Celtic against Rangers, his mother would say, well, wish the boy well. He would say, the father would say, I hope you don't get beat. She said, that's not a very enthusiastic message. He said, that's as much as I'm prepared to say. What personal, I mean, I should know, I'm your brother, but I've been away from home a long time, and what personal experiences of sectarianism have you had in recent decades?
Well, I mean, never mind recent decades. I was aware on Sunday when Rangers beat Celtic 2-1 in the semi-final that there was a feeling that I hadn't seen that often lately, but there was a strong... I didn't see any violence, but I saw extremely provocative behaviour in the streets, you know, the chanting and the making of not entirely friendly gestures to people across the street and so on. So I think it's still, of course it is still present. I think many Glaswegians say that, and it probably is to some extent contained and diffused by humour, but I sometimes still wonder what happens when the laughing stops. I think we've had such a long experience in Scotland of coping with it and of finding a kind of codified humour to contain it. But I still think it remains an element which I would prefer weren't here at all.
Well, within one area which Lanarkshire is pretty strict as regard to where you should be and where you shouldn't be after I joined Celtic. I maybe lost one or two people that who used to have normal relationships with, nodding to and speaking to, and maybe even pals with some of them. He more or less kind of dropped me. But look, I think that just more or less showed in many ways that they weren't really real friends anyway, to start with. I don't think that should make any difference.
One major strength running through Matt's life was his religious faith. And your mother's part in this is interesting because she came from not only a Protestant family, but quite a strong Protestant. You know, it's a bit like what Jock Stein told me about his family. He said it wasn't just Protestant. He said it was bordering on orange. And how did that work out? Did your mother embrace the Catholic faith very enthusiastically?
In fact, she finished up a better Catholic than any of us, really, didn't she?
When we were playing in the cup tie, my mum used to give me a half crown and say, go up to the church and light a few candles. So this particular day I went up to the church and we used to have a very strict canon called Canon O'Donnell at St Alphonsus. And I've gone in and I've put my half crown in the box. Of course, I'm not satisfied with one candle or two candles. I get about a dozen candles. And all of a sudden, there's a tap on my shoulder. And it's the canon. And he's not a bit interested in football. He says, what do you think you're doing? I says, oh, I'm lighting a few candles for the team. My mother sent me up to light a few candles for the team. He says, team? What team, though? I said, Man United, of course. he didn't believe me, and he even went into the presbytery, got the key out and unlocked the box to make sure I'd put a £0.50 in.
Busby always resented the suggestion that Manchester United under him had acquired a Catholic identity, but the power of his personality and the depth of his faith were bound to have a combined effect.
United was not a Catholic club in the same way that Celtic is a Catholic club. But when Sir Matt, or Matt, became the manager, for some reason all sorts of priests and bishops used to sort of gravitate towards him. And now what that meant was after the war, when United weren't particularly well supported, was that parish priests would bring whole parishes to Manchester United. You know, they would follow the priest, and I've seen whole blocks of priests at Manchester United in the 50s. You know, given over to
and nuns too.
nuns as well, nuns and priests.
Celtic's Catholic associations could not be more basic. The club was founded in the latter part of the 19th century, largely because of the determination of a Marist brother who was a headmaster in the East End of Glasgow. Brother Walfred's main aim in starting the club was to raise money to feed and clothe the poor of the East End parishes, where there was a heavy concentration of Irish immigrants. He was also keen to keep young Catholics loyal to their own faith and their own community, and saw Celtic as a cohesive influence.
By a lonely prison wall, I heard a young girl calling, Michael, they have taken you away, for you stole Trevelyan's corn, so the young might see the morn. Now a prison ship lies waiting in the bay. Low lie the fields of Athenry, where once we watched the small free birds fly. Our love was on the wing, we had dreams and songs to sing. It's so lonely round the fields of Athenry. By a lonely prison wall, I heard a young man calling. Nothing matters, Mary, when you're free. Against the famine and the crown, I rebelled, they cut me down. Now you must raise our child with dignity. Low lie the fields of Athenry, where once we watched the small free birds fly.
Celtic have such a grip over people, particularly in Scotland, in the west of Scotland. It's very hard to shake off. People think of it from Saturday to Saturday. They go to the game on the Saturday, they go for a drink after it, they go to work during the week, they talk about it all the time, so really their whole life is wrapped around it. That's why Celtic have more of an identity rather than just something to go and see on a Saturday. Celtic get passed down through families, through history, and I think the feeling is also passed on, this family feeling, this feeling that we came here and we weren't really wanted by quite a few of the people in the community. And I think that's what Celtic exist by.
The acquisition of Stein and subsequent promotion of him to captain were consistent with Celtic's policy on signing players, which was genuinely ecumenical for generations before Rangers recently made a break with their tradition of confining recruitment strictly to Protestants. But was the denominational mix always harmonious in the Celtic dressing room? The best man to answer that question was to be found in a suburb on the south side of Glasgow. It's a long way from Sean Fallon's birthplace in County Sligo, but his years as a player and then as Stein's assistant manager at Celtic have given him roots here.
I felt I wanted to join a club that had done something for the poor.
So
I was surprised at the feelings in Glasgow, the way the people looked on Catholic and Protestants.
Well, the intensity of the feeling.
The intensity was unbelievable. That was all foreign to me, having been brought up in a different environment. And then the fact that there were so many Protestants attached to Celtic Football Club.
There was one occasion, wasn't there, at least one, after Celtic lost to Rangers at Ibrox, when the great Charlie Tully caused a bit of an argument in the dressing room by suggesting that Celtic were suffering from having too many Protestants in the team.
Well, actually, I remember that quite vividly. It was actually, it was a kind of a communal bath that we all could get into. At that time, there was no showers, which most clubs have now. And Charlie made that comment in the bath, and God, I thought he was going to get drowned because, and I was quite worried because we're outnumbered. The Catholics were outnumbered in the bath. But Charlie got away with it. Being Charlie, he got away with quite a lot.
Did Jock have any part in that argument?
He wasn't too happy about the remark, and he made it known.
Did he?
Yes, he made it known in no small way.
Is that all there is? Is that all there is? If that's all there is, my friends, then let's keep dancing. Let's break out the booze.
When Bill left Carlisle, was there acrimony about his departure?
Well, I think people were a bit surprised. Bill had a team that they were in the Shankly mould. You know, they played the Shankly type of football, and his great strength, I think, was this fact that he never stopped being a player, thinking like a player, and doing all he could for players, rather than in those days there were a lot of managers who were what I would call directors managers.
Yeah.
They weren't players managers. And Bill, I thought, was a players manager, and he always thought like a player. Now,
he missed it so much when he stopped, didn't he?
That was. You see, everybody misses it, Hugh. The worst day of your life is when you finish playing, but he missed it more than anybody, I think. He went on being a player, you know. He was incredible, Bill. But you see, he went to Grimsby, and then he must have got perhaps a wee bit fed up.
If that's all there is, my friends, then let's keep dancing.
They may have been at Man United and Stan Curtis at Wolverhampton Wanderers and Billy Nicholson somewhere else, but I didn't think they were better than me because they were with big clubs. Oh no.
When, in 1954, Shankly went from Grimsby to the manager's job at Workington, the change again represented movement sideways rather than upwards. He was still in the 3rd Division North, still a long way from finding the right vehicle for his driving ambition.
I said, how's it going at Workington, Mr. Shankly? Oh, he says, we've got a great strip. I said, what do you mean? A good team? He said, no, I've got a great strip. He said, jersey, pants and stockings. He says, only one problem, we've got 18 directors. He says, in fact, we've got more directors than we've got players. He says,
Is that all there is? If that's all there is, my friends, then let's keep...
And then what he done was, afore you played
he put 11 wee tablets. Right? He put 11 wee tablets down there, right? And he watched to see. And if you didn't take one of the tablets, you wouldn't be playing next week because it was a buzz. It gave you a buzz. What happened was, oh man, God, what happened was, after the game, you couldn't eat or nothing. You were in a high about 8 or 9 o'clock. Before you could. I think it was. I don't know what you call it.
We're all in trouble here now.
Yes.
There's going to have to be a retrospective inquiry into Bill Shankly.
He definitely left it. He left the pill.
It could be another Ben Johnson scandal.
And I'll tell you, if you didn't take that, you wouldn't be playing the following week. As soon as it went down, they were all into it. And it kept you, I don't know what it was, but it kept you in a buzz because after the game you still felt you could go again.
Oh, well,
You understand?
They're red energy tablets, aren't they?
Yes, yeah, well, that's what we'll say.
Well, call it energy.
It's definitely just energy.
We need a problem.
Yeah, it's much the same as Lucasade.
All there is, my friends, then let's keep dancing. Let's break out the booze and have...
After Workington, the next stop was Huddersfield, where the developing manager met up with a boy player he recognised instantly as a prodigy. Dennis Law recognised Shankly as an often disconcerting original.
At Huddersfield, you had a long corridor, you know, and because Shankly's office was at the bottom, and the treatment room was at the other end. And I remember coming out, I had some treatment, I don't know, I saw something wrong with my leg, and I come out, and there's only the two of us in the corridor. But of course, it wasn't going to be fit for the Saturday. So as we were walking along, I mean, absolute silence, he walked right by me. If you were injured, you were out of the picture at all. Now, of course, a fortnight later, with the same scene, if you're fit to play, how you doing? Nice to see you, looking well, Bob.
After the war, Matt Busby was lucky, I must say this, to have a team of players that could play, even though most of them were veterans. So until Matt got his young boys ready, giving them time to get them ready, he used his old players. Then, of course, come the Busby babes. And Matt's foresight, Matt's ability, everything that a man needs to be a football manager, Matt Busby has.
When the astonishing crop of talents delivered by Manchester United's youth programme in the mid-1950s came to be called the Busby Babes, it was confirmation of the extent to which one man had stretched the public perception of how influential a manager could be in the creation of a team and their playing style. All of Busby's teams bore the stamp of his belief in creative, adventurous football, in flair and verve and freedom of expression, and none more strikingly than the Babes.
We'd started a youth system and from the start, and it was there, and you could see players of calibre there, but they were still very young, and it got to the stage I started thinking to myself, will I do it, will I not? And we played this match, and I've put a lot of these young boys in, and we won 4-0. And I remember the following day, walking along the golf course, and these things were turning over my mind, and I said to myself, well, they won 4-0, but what was the strength of the 4-0 win? And this went on for a couple of days. Will I put them in, will I not? And all of a sudden I said, right, I'm going to put them all in.
Well, now after 13 minutes, Manchester gave Birmingham no time to recover from the shock. United were pressing hard when Pegg hooked the ball back from the goal line and Charlton cracked it in.
Where did you have your digs?
Near Stretford Town Hall, which is about a quarter of a mile from Old Trafford football ground, and we all stayed in the same place and we all went out together. There was about 12, 14 of us there.
14 teenage footballers?
Yeah, well, yeah. All the, not just teenagers, I mean, Jackie Blanchflower, Mark Jones, Duncan Edwards, Billy Whelan, all the lads that had travelled from...
All in the same dig?
All in the same digs, all together, yeah. It was great. It was paradise. And I think a lot of that's down really to Samad, because he let everybody know that everyone in the club was as important as anyone else.
Manchester United, favourites on form, looked dangerous right away. Quickly, outside right, John Berry worked in from the wing, put in a hard drive, and...
he met me off the Hessian boat at 8:30 in the morning, took me to his house, and we had breakfast together. And he was the first manager to wear a tracksuit and go and mingle with the players. And at that time, he was my legal guardian. You had to get a paper signed that he was my legal guardian. In other words, he was my second father, and he treated me like a son, and I treated him like a father. Yes.
He did things that people below him couldn't possibly do. You know, his negotiations, the decisions that he made about us going to play in Europe when the Football League was saying you can't do this. When he was actually financing the start of what you see here now, you know, the first corporate boxes really were Sir Matt's idea when he went across to San Francisco was to see the Giant Stadium, and he saw the corporate box and thought, well, I have some of those at Old Trafford. Well, he made decisions like that nobody below him could possibly do, you know. And he took chances. But he knew what he wanted to do. He wanted to be the best. He didn't just want to be the best in England. He wanted to be the best in the world. So Europe was an adventure that we had to be part of.
100,000 pairs of eyes at Wembley mirror the interest of the world as England's long-held soccer supremacy faces a supreme test.
England then defending the goal to our right. And now there's an exhibition of ball control. Just look at that from the inside left Puskás. Well, we see a great deal of that. I think we're going to have an awful lot of trouble holding these unbeaten Hungarians.
Just watch the smart footwork by Puskás.
The need for a widening of English football's horizons that Busby saw so clearly was driven home on the playing pitches of Europe throughout the 1950s.
Now a chance for Hidaguti. It's a goal!
How could the old insularity survive in the face of the dazzling performances of Real Madrid at club level and the Hungarians on the international field? The lessons certainly were not lost on Celtic, whose enlightened response to all this innovative brilliance exposed Jock Stein to some of the healthiest influences his fertile imagination could have encountered.
England 2, Hungary 6.
1953, they took us all to Wembley to see England play Hungary. And that was a great fiesta of football there. We saw something new happening. The next year, they took us to the World Cup in Switzerland. We saw again Hungary. We saw West Germany win the World Cup. But we saw then there was something new happening in football, and we had quite a number of players who were really interested deeply in football. Bobby Collins was one, Bertie Peacock, Neil Mochan, Willie Fernie, Sean and myself. We used to sit and talk about it a good bit. And we went into deeper aspects of football than we were playing in. Then I thought that I would like to, once I was finished, I would like to take a place in football.
When did you first become aware of him?
It was the Coronation Cup, which was in 1953, and the top, well, Rangers, Celtic and Hibs from Scotland and the three big clubs from England. I saw Jock then, and, well, they won the Coronation Cup. But they went on to win, in that season, 53-54, the league and the Scottish Cup. Now, Celtic had won nothing before then. Jock comes in as a stopgap, and suddenly they start to play a lot better. And there was no doubt that that's where he first revealed he was a leader of men. He'd played in low-grade football up until then. Indeed, Llanelli was non-league, and here he was given the opportunity of leadership. Suddenly a team that didn't look like a team became a team.
Cara mia, ti amo.
I was fairly good in the air, nothing more. I was good in the air, and at that time Celtic needed someone there. I had good players round about me. I wasn't a bad positional player, but I wasn't exceptional as a player now. Just ordinary, very ordinary.
The amazing Indian summer of Stein's playing career was ended by injury.
Through an ankle injury in 1957, I gave up the game and I had to come back. In another aspect of the game, I was put in charge of the Celtic young players. It gave me first a chance to control players, and it gave me a chance to have a deeper look at the tactical side of the game.
Intelligence, alertness and imagination had given Stein maximum return on the modest technical gifts he took on the field as a player. Once Celtic gave him a coaching role, those mental strengths seemed sure to carry him into club management.
I was just starting to emerge as a young footballer. Of course, come up against like the Celtic reserves quite a bit. When Jock was starting to take a backroom role at Celtic, looking after the reserves, and his reputation was gathering among the players when we'd all meet at the weekend and that type of thing. So I think there was.
What the players were saying, like, this fella knows something about it.
Yes, well, I always remember introducing the tactics board with Celtic reserves. The tactics board, and used to having tactics and about free kicks and things like that. So he had a vision that was different from coaches of his time.
European Cup semi-final, second leg. Madrid won the first encounter by...
The natural effect of Matt Busby's foresight and refusal to be intimidated by the reactionary policies of the Football League, who were against English clubs competing in Europe, was to bring European Cup drama to Old Trafford in 1957.
Manchester, 4 goals down in the aggregate, need a miracle to save them. Is this it? Peg centres? Taylor does the rest.
United lost a semi-final to Real Madrid, but as league champions they were back in the European Cup in 1958 and back in the semi-final after a hard-won result in Belgrade.
It was a Thursday and there was a novena on at church, and I went there when the parents sat there all night, and we still didn't know, and it was late at night that we found out how many people had died.
Jean had been out at the airport to pick my dad up when the news had come through.
Really?
Went straight over to St Pat's and I sat in there, and I must have sat in there for about an hour and a half, just cried my eyes out, and it was unbelievable.
He wanted to be the best. He didn't just want to be the best in England, he wanted to be the best in the world. So Europe was an adventure that we had to be part of. Three times we tried to take off. Twice they came back, and then the third time we went off, and then eventually we didn't get off, and we ran off the end of the runway. We hit a house and all this.
What do you remember of the moment itself, Jackie, of the crash?
Oh, well, I remember everything, really. I was in and out of consciousness, and I seen it all, the plane going around and catching fire, and Greg running out. I couldn't move myself, and that's when your whole life goes and passes you in front of you.
You were slipping in and out of consciousness.
I was flung out through broke the seat belt. That's because of the damage to the pelvis and the kidneys. And Charlton, who was sat across the way, he was flung out in the belt, undid it and walked away. So then I broke the seat belt and went in and out of consciousness after that.
Very, very ill people were on this second floor, and I was walking along in front, about 10 yards in front of my mum, and I saw this old man in an oxygen tent, and he looked grey, and I thought, oh yeah, poor so-and-so, you know. And then it struck me, it was my dad. So I dashed back for my mother, because I knew that she would sort of nearly collapse.
Was he given the last rites?
Yes.
More than once?
Yes. I think it was twice. Twice.
What were the manifestations of the depth of his faith?
I think the manifestations were that he didn't doubt it. I think from his mother and from his upbringing, it had been put into him as an inner strength. And I think the one thing it gave him, more than anything else, was a confidence. You know, the thing about faith really is that if you do not doubt, you know, the universe and God, there is a confidence in your mannerisms, in your you always feel it's going to be all right in the end because I'm in God's hands. And I spoke to him a number of, particularly in Ireland, you know, and he would never get him to discuss. He just gave you the impression it was as much a part of him, you know, as his skin was and his bones were. It was himself, you know. It was there. Okay, I'll get on with my life now, but I've got that. It's like a suit of clothes I'm wearing. It's my comfort, it's my confidence, and it's my being.
What was Alston like? It was a small mining village, nothing else but mines. The people themselves were brought up in a faith which was football. Do you remember now, looking back to those days you spent in that Munich hospital, exactly how you felt? Yes, I do remember. It was a terrible, terrible experience. And I remember my feelings when I did come to a bit of sanity and realized the whole situation. And the last thing I thought at the time would be that I'd never be associated with football again. That was out. That was definitely out.
When he came back from Munich, he was hurting. He was really hurting. And yet at the same time, he was steadfast. He believed in the club, he believed in football, but he was hurting. And I think at that particular time, there was no romance in Ray, you know, the phoenix coming out of the ashes. It was despair. There was something very dark in his life. But he got through that. It wasn't the romance that got him through that. It was the real hard graft and the determination.
Of the 23 who died in the Munich air crash, 8 were journalists, 3 were members of the United backroom staff, and 8 were players from the squad Busby considered the greatest concentration of talent he ever worked with.
was 59, early in the season, October. We're playing at Huddersfield Town, and 2 people came from this club, walked down the slope and asked me if I'd go to Liverpool. It was as blunt as that. And a few months later, it came to pass. That was it. I came here because I'd been to Liverpool. I knew that the potential was here, the crowd was here, and that was the chance I was looking for. This is similar to Glasgow, you see. I mean, I've seen Rangers and Celtic boys kissing the bus. This is the same, as I told you, the same kind of people as me and the people in Glasgow. Liverpool and Glasgow are similar. And this is just the passion of them. There was potential here. There was people here with the same kind of fervour as me. So I'm one of the people. I'm just one of the people that stands in the cup. They think the same as I do, and I think the same as they do. So that it was a kind of marriage of people that liked each other.
Just as Matt Busby had become part of Manchester's emotional life, a few miles away, Bill Shankly, another miner whose background was even further removed from big city experience, was about to prove that he and the city of Liverpool were made for each other. Liverpool, the club, were in the second division, but the new manager would change that.
I was here about, I think it was a year before Bill turned up, and it was a great thing to see him, because we were going nowhere, and they did the best signing they ever did when Bill arrived. The whole club changed, it started to vibrate. And of course, as you know, from that day on, everything started to move forward for Liverpool.
What do you think was the quality in Bill that caused him to have such an immediate impact?
Well, it was his great personality. This is something you either have or you haven't. And you're talking about the Bill Shanklys, the personality of the person shone as he walked along. He wasn't 5'8", which was his height. He was 6'4", and a beam shone out of him. And this is how you approached him. Everybody. And of course, again, the other thing about him, he was a simple man. There was nothing pretentious about him. He was a simple man.
When Jock Stein entered club management 15 years after Busby and 11 after Shankly, he travelled no further than the east of Scotland. There have been suggestions that when Stein left his coaching job at Celtic Park in 1960 to manage Dunfermline, the Celtic chairman, Bob Kelly, was, in effect, sending him out to serve an apprenticeship before bringing him back to take charge of the Glasgow club. That is myth.
The Dunfermline job came up, and the chance for me to go then came. I thought that then Sir Robert Kelly thought that I had gone as far as I would expect to go with a club like Celtic. I was a non-Catholic, and maybe they felt that maybe I wouldn't achieve the job as manager, but I moved out to try and prove that I could be a manager.
Stein's capacity to effect instant improvement wherever he went showed when he saved Dunfermline from relegation, and more dramatically, when they beat Celtic in the Scottish Cup final. Once in management, Stein acquired experience at an astonishing rate, making Dunfermline the unlikely vehicle for his first foray into Europe. Valencia didn't enjoy Fife.
They'd never seen frost before, I don't think. No. And they didn't have rubber boots even. They had the leather boots, you know, and all come out with the gloves on, and psychologically they were beat before they started. They just didn't want to play.
They didn't want to play. They had a big coloured boy at centre forward, Waldo. Waldo? He didn't want
was watching him. I mean, if it had been a league game, it'd been off.
Because Jock went into it thoroughly, and his instructions were to get them down in the frost as quick as possible. Let them taste it, you know. So once 2 or 3 of them went down, that was it. It was finished.
Melrose coming in. First take shot. Goal! 3-0. Edwards. Smith not putting Edwards offside. Here the keeper. First time shot. Goal! Oh, stop goal! Incredibly, when Birmingham lead 5-1, and we've only been playing 35 minutes.
He could bring you down to that size. You know, think you are. You think you're an internationalist and that. You know, you think you're this, and then the next day you come in with a
clean sheet.
Clean sheet. You start afresh. No manager can do that nowadays. You know, fall out with players because you've got to call upon them at any time. You know, so Jock always knew that.
Right. Treat you like a man.
Correct.
Right. You know,
Correct.
Give you your place.
Of course he did at all times.
And all of a sudden, Jane had said something about, look, this is your life, this is something you've got to do, you've got to face it. And I got this little bit of urge saying to herself, all right, yes, I think I'll try and go back. And I got this obsession again that Manchester United were going to the top.
Like everyone else, everyone thinks they'll do it, but we're all egotistical enough to think we could do that kind of job better than someone else. I didn't think that I could do it better than anyone else, but I felt I wanted to try, and I did try it in Fairmont.
It's the greatest thing in the world, natural enthusiasm. You're nothing without it. Nothing. If a manager is honest and he has this natural enthusiasm, I think whilst he can't go into the field with the players, he can convey it to the players. You understand? He's with them and they're with him, and they'll be successful.
Much of what is supposed to have been exciting and glamorous in the 60s was sham, but it was a thrilling decade in British football, and part of the excitement came from the accumulating evidence that Busby, Shankly and Stein formed a triumvirate of greatness unique in the history of the game. It was certain, however, that the remarkable standards they set would eventually create problems for them. For the football manager, an outstanding record can be a gun pointed at his own head.